Hello, Spiral Out Podcast listeners. Big news for the podcast. Big news. This podcast has got its first official sponsor. Yes, somebody sponsored this podcast. Head on over to rockabilia.com. It's the coolest place on the internet to get all your officially licensed music merch. That's right, officially licensed. You can get Tool shirts. You could get a Perfect Circle hoodie, a Deftone shirt. You could get a Metallica towel. You could get a Sleep Token sculpture. So head on over to rockabilia.com and use the promo code SPIRALOUT to get 10% off your order. Again, rockabilia.com, promo code SPIRALOUT to get your Metallica t-shirt or your Tool shirt or a AC/DC towel or a Beatles blanket. They have a ton of cool stuff. I bought a Deftones poster the other day. And again, official tour poster. So, rockabilia.com. Thank you for listening. Spiral out. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Spiral Out Podcast. I'm your host, Chris West. And on today's episode, we have Kyndyll Lackey. She is a professional tarot card reader. She is she dabbles in magic, right? What else? What else are the things that you dabble in? It seems like to be a wide list of interesting topics. You do occult stuff, right?
I do occult stuff, yep.
Oh, and all of it is not all of it, but a large chunk of it you relate it to Tool and specifically Maynard James Keenan, right?
Correct. Yes. Yes. So I am a writer and an occultist. A background used to be in another life was a professional social worker. And when I hung up my social work license, I transitioned over into a communications practice that centered mostly on writing. And then began to gradually transition over into full-time occult work, which I've been doing that now for full-time probably 5 or 6 years, part-time in some form or fashion for over 20, and have been a professional tarot reader for 22 years.
So when it comes to occult stuff, that's like a huge universe, right? You tell somebody you're doing occult work, that could mean, like I said, magic. We have left and right hand that I know of, and like chaos, and then there's like Theoma stuff, which is in there. Dawn of the Golden
Golden
Sun,
Dawn.
Golden Dawn. There's so much. Satanism is in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well,
Symbols, and it's just huge. Like, I guess my question is as an occultist, do you study all of it?
in a manner of speaking, yeah. So when I first began practicing, it was I was in college. I was working for a small new age and occult bookstore here in Nashville called Magical Journey, and I worked there throughout college. And part of that job as booksellers and merchandisers is we had to know a little bit about everything. Pretty much any path that walked through the door, somebody asking about me to be able to point them in a direction of where to find materials, talk with them a little bit about what their interests might be, and how we can generally help assist them. So, right from the start, this was I converted to Wicca right out of high school, and started working at Magical Journey very soon after that. So I went from being a Wiccan to having to have a much broader understanding of the occult milieu in general. So yeah, I know a little bit about a lot of things, and
Sure.
then there are a few pathways that I really dove deep into, and namely that's hermetics for me. I really, really appreciate a more balanced middle path. But in order to really practice well on the middle path, you have to have a developed understanding of both the left and the right. So
So
I've
explain to me. Uh, Again, I'm trying to, uh, and don't take offense to this. I'm trying to ask questions as if I was like a 3-year-old, because there's a lot of language I think that people may not have heard. I mean, if you're into Tool and you're listening to this podcast, most of this language should be at least been thrown out to you at some point or another. Like hermetic, that's a specific teaching style, or um,
yeah, yeah. So just to kind of back that out a little bit. So hermetics mostly focuses on the teachings of a figure called Hermes Trismegistus, and who, depending upon where you look and what resources you consult, was a human who eventually became a god, was a philosopher, was a god hiding in a human body, was perhaps all of those things. But that figure was the originator of the Emerald Tablet, which contains some language that most people who are listening here are probably have heard before. As above, so below is a major tenet of that philosophy, and really what Hermeticism focuses on is balance between what most of us consider to be opposites, but throughout the learning in the system, you begin to understand that duality doesn't truly exist. Duality is something that the human mind uh, fabricates in order to be able to make decisions quickly. It's an evolutionary kind of tool that we develop.
yeah, this is a theme that I've heard quite regularly. I always hated that word. I've heard a lot when talking about magic, is this concept that you're talking about of they're not really being balanced or necessarily good or evil. It just is. Um, there just is, like, what is happening, like, in the moment, and
Mhm.
for some people that can be quite scary. Um, to not have this order, I guess, or cosmic, I don't know, boundaries maybe. Like
Mhm.
like almost like karma is like it's not necessarily a thing.
I think karma does exist, but it doesn't have the value that we assign it.
Sure.
I think the arc of the universe is long and bends toward balance.
Gotcha.
And depending upon, I mean, to kind of borrow a turn of phrase from MLK, but like balance is what is ultimately being sought. Kind of like when you pour concrete,
Okay.
self-leveling concrete, right? The universe is always seeking toward the self-leveling, and depending upon what values we in our limited human brains assign to things, we might view that balancing as being either good or evil. But in the grand sense of things, it really isn't either one. It's simply balancing between extremes,
So
if that makes sense.
yeah, no, I guess where I think also I'd like to start is I have some idea of what you're talking about, but what would be the first thing you would tell somebody if they hadn't known anything about magic or occultism? Like, how would you start off the explanation?
Oh. Wow, that's a. I think what I would start off with is essentially what we've been talking about, in that what we what we commonly perceive to be as good or evil is really in all existence neutral, and that kind of like whenever I'm talking with someone about the tarot and they are afraid of getting a bad card, and I go into this notion of good cards and bad cards often, because what I want people to understand is that the cards are archetypes, and all archetypes are neutral. They can be applied positively or negatively depending upon the situation. But
Which
there
is like
isn't,
the same thing you can do with music, right?
yeah.
Um, and this is a conversation I have a lot on this show where, and it's something I was thinking about while looking at excerpts from your book about different Tool, Perfect Circle, Pucifer songs that you were assigning to specific tarot cards and ideas. The question that came up for me was I assign specific meaning to Tool songs that may be different than what you assign them to. So it, I don't really have a question. I'm more uh, trying to relate it to the cards themselves, meaning that when you're doing a tarot card reading, is it up to you or is it up to me, the person getting read, to interpret the cards?
My style is cooperative.
Okay,
When I'm reading for someone, I am first of all making a judgment call based on the dignity of the cards around the card that I'm reading. What's the overall flavor?
sure.
If the overall flavor of the cards on the table is challenging, that's going to be reflected in the way I interpret it. But then also, as a person who used to be a social worker, I'm deeply steeped in the notion of each individual person is the sole expert in their own lives. I don't know what is best for them. They know what is best for them. So my job when I'm reading for someone is to kind of give them the lay of the land. What I see from a 30,000 foot level as a person who's dropping into their life for just a few minutes, and I'm telling them what I see, and then they're helping me to kind of, okay, yes, I know what that's related to. That's related to this part of my life. And then we can kind of discuss further, and then we can unfold deeper meanings in the card and discuss how their behavior or their choices are reflected in that card. And if they're happy with that, how to stay in that pathway. And if they're not happy with that, what are their options for changing course?
Hmm.
So it's um, my intention is to not sensationalize, to not build up any sort of sense of um, frenetic or panicked energy, but more to um, drop into the energy of what's happening in their life, uh, see it from the most balanced possible position, and then help them make choices that are in their best interest from there.
It seems like there's a lot of personal responsibility on both ends of taking it seriously. At least I think that's the biggest problem I have with magic or religion in any sense of the word, or just thematic ideas. Is like yet you have to put the will in there, right? And I definitely have issues with that. I tend not to believe in most things, but
I mean, it certainly happens a fair amount that most of the time I'm reading for people who seek me out, and
sure.
then there's uh, a couple of days a week where I'm in a shop and I'm taking walk-in readings, and the person who may be sitting across from me may or may not believe in archetypes, may or may not believe in energy or things that can't be sensed with the five senses. Um, and that can be challenging. Um, Sometimes people sit down and they want me to prove to them something.
No, I don't have
You
that in
know,
me. I'm definitely open. That's the other thing. I would like to say I'm not closed minded enough to not believe that this has an effect. Or I also am a part of the what school of thought that like if you believe it, it's probably real because I feel like that's how the universe works. Like anything, you if you can think about it and imagine it and manifest it, then it's probably real. Whether
mm-hmm.
that would be the entirety of occultism, or uh, Catholicism. I mean, that was created at some point, and
Yeah,
it, and
absolutely.
people and millions of people believe that is real.
Thoughts
Yeah,
are
exactly.
real.
Yeah,
Ideas are real, and they have real impact. And if the only thing that we know about thoughts is that they impact behavior, that's enough um, to call that a thing that exists. So
and
yeah,
I find it interesting, and I don't know if a lot of people make this connection, but I do. There seems to be a lot of like crossover and connection between occultism and like a newer belief system, I guess you can say. It's also science, but like quantum physics and like sacred geometry and more of these like uh, wild schools of thought. They seem very like entangled to me. Well,
mhm.
I don't quite understand it, but you may be able to. Maybe it has to do with
ah,
shapes and thought, like you said, thoughts and. But it's very interesting to me. It all
yeah,
relates in here.
I agreed. Yeah, a lot of it, especially on the quantum physics side of things, far above my pay grade.
All right.
Um,
Me too.
but to me, what it really emphasizes is that modern science is proving what ancient philosophy and ancient um, spirituality has known for thousands of years. And we can get into all kinds of speculative, wild speculation about that stuff
Well, like
too.
Atlantis and
Yeah.
stuff like that,
Yeah.
which I love talking about. Who's some people that definitely feel like have a grasp on this is Tool, and they seem to be able to mesh, the music, the magic, the sacred geometry, all of these different themes that aren't necessarily specifically occult, but occult related, into this package of mystery and uh, let's just say magic again.
Yeah. Yeah. Multi-sensory experience, ritual hiding in plain sight, um, for master magician slash shaman on stage weaving a spell that the entire audience is under. And I think it doesn't take an advanced practitioner to know that something different is happening at a tool show than just about any other major act performing today. And I know
Well,
that is me going pretty far with
I don't,
that.
I don't think so either. With that, because if you again do research into magic, and I don't mean like magician magic. We're not talking about hand and card tricks here. Just for people listening, if you get in and talk about the occult, a lot of it is ritual, and we're not necessarily talking about sacrificing animals or something of that nature. We're talking about putting uh, putting your will and thought into the universe, right?
Yeah.
That's what I always got from rituals in general.
Mhm.
Um, I
The way I typically kind of describe it to people who aren't practitioners is it is a way to perform psychoanalysis on ourselves using high drama. That's what magic is. Magic is not something that is it's not intended to change the exterior world so much as it's intended to change the interior world. How we perceive things, how we behave, altering deeply ingrained behavioral patterns that were brought about, however they were brought about, whenever they were brought about, but patterns that are no longer helpful, they've become dysfunctional. But our typical ways and modalities of shifting things for ourselves aren't working. And so you employ something that speaks to a really deep, visceral, primal part of your psyche, and that responds to high drama. It responds to archetypes. It responds to the stories that human beings have been telling themselves and each other for millennia. And that is what magic is utilizing to help people change the way they see and interact with the world. And therefore, their experience of that world then also shift.
Hmm. So by archetypes, I mean, and this is, if you're listening, how ancient this term could possibly be, and what you're talking about is, you know, when they designed the constellations, right? They gave it a specific meaning and a feeling and a name, and ancient people anthropomorphized stars into constellations and gave them meanings. This is like one of the oldest things human beings have done. So when, again, something like at a tool show relating it to a ritual, who knows what intention tool is putting out there, and then it's the combined energy of, I don't know how many people were at the tool show you were at last night, but I'm guessing it was somewhere in the range of 30,000 people.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like a whole stadium with the people. That's a lot of energy.
It's a massive amount of energy, and the ability to be able to raise and direct and manage that energy is impressive. I don't think people really appreciate how much effort it takes to do that and not just start a riot. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I mean, for AA, first of all, you have to be good at your instruments. Whether there's a four, in my opinion, best musicians I can think of. Um, so getting into the show last night. Well, actually, before we get into the show, I really am curious, and this is something I've always been curious about. I've learned about the occult. I've done some independent research on my own in the past with these ideas. I've never really looked into how it relates to Tool, even though they were probably the ones that sparked it. Like I never would have heard of Aleister Crowley if I didn't hear about it from old Tool websites from back in the day. But
Yeah.
then I went off on my own to figure out what all of this stuff was, but I never kind of brought it all back. So I'd be very curious if you could tell me some like Easter eggs or hidden things that most people may not notice if they're into Tool that might relate to occultism and magic.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I mean, I think the best example, the most Easter egg laden song that Tool that immediately comes to my mind that Tool has written would be The Grudge. To me, nearly every line in The Grudge is just packed with occult symbolism, mostly centering around the the mythology of Saturn, um, both as a planetary entity as well as a mythological figure. Um,
What does that figure represent?
Saturn represents time and restriction, constriction, restraint, discipline, um, responsibility, commitments, and also, and when we get into discussing Saturn um, as an alchemical facet, we're talking about the metal lead. That's the metal that's associated or correspondent to Saturn in hermetics. And as we all know, lead is heavy and it's considered to be the basest of the metals. And when we hear about, the ancient art of alchemy, the ancient science of alchemy, what they were trying to do was transform lead, the most worthless, basic element, into gold, which was the prized pinnacle metal, the most revered. And those also became symbolic of human nature. They wanted to raise themselves from this leaden state, this dull eyed, dull thinking, lethargic state, to something that was shining and bright and full of light and love and life. So the process of metal alchemy is trying to transform literal lead into literal gold, but spiritual alchemy is trying to transform the human soul. Hope that wasn't loud. Transform the human soul into from something that is very low vibration into something that's much higher.
And you're saying in the song, "The Grudge" is one song that is prominent in, or
Yeah.
that's the theme for you.
Yeah. So the theme that I see, so there's that. So when we listen to the lyrics, and the lyrics talking about give away the stone, and is referring to the heaviness, the weightiness of what carrying a grudge takes its toll on us spiritually, mentally. But also the other end of that, the other part of that analogy comes in with this idea of Saturn comes back around, Saturn ascends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is, to my thinking and my interpretation, referring to the cyclical nature of orbiting planets, right? So when a planet returns back to a certain point, it's a return. But it's called a return in astrology, and Saturn return is a pretty big deal for people who are in the occult and New Age world. It's a cycle of approximately 27 years, and essentially what happens is every 27 years or so, Saturn returns back to the place where it was at your birth. And it's an opportunity for you to take stock of uh, how far you've come, how far you've grown. And if you've learned the lessons that you were here to learn, you proceed on. You pass the level and you get leveled up. If you haven't learned those lessons, if you haven't done the work that was being asked of you, whether that's learning to let go of grudges or learning to extend grace to yourself or any other kind of soul level lesson, if you haven't done that work, then you kind of get smacked around by Saturn, so to speak. You get dealt life events that really force that issue to the forefront, that demand that you deal with it. So
Do you have
the
to wait
whole
another 27 years before it lets up? I feel like I'm being knocked around by Saturn.
yeah, well, I mean, depending on
I
your
don't think
your
I leveled
age,
up.
you think you're still dealing with the same issues that you were
Maybe not the
before.
same, but who I would have to take stock on my whole life
Well,
to
it
really
usually
answer that
makes
question.
itself known pretty harshly. Pretty,
Uh,
pretty. You can't miss it. Uh, and
Fair.
and so the whole point of the song really is, you can choose to surrender your old grudges and lighten your spiritual load, and become light, um, like a child. Or you can choose to keep holding on to your grudges, your slights, the things that hurt you, the things that you felt damaged you, your traumas, and then continue to suffer them because they will always be present. And so the whole point of the song is like, it's your choice that you literally can choose to set this down and take that load off, set it down, and never pick it up again.
I This is a common theme in life that I don't necessarily know if a lot of people understand. Most things are a choice, meaning um, I run into this a lot with people where they go, "You made me mad." I didn't make you mad. I did something. You got mad. Um, it's kind of your choice on how mad you got and whatnot. But that's just like a small fraction of what you're talking about, I think,
Mhm.
too. Me, I'm just again relating it to like if I was trying to talk to it, and again, I don't mean this in a mean way, audience. If I was talking to like a 3-year-old,
Yeah.
um, but it's the same basic concept. And again, this turns into how um, neutral magic is, right?
Mhm.
It's not anyone else's choice but your own on any way that you feel, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And even the most horrific of events, it's kind of your choice. And this is where it ends up being kind of scary and how neutral it actually is. And this is actually something I personally believe, but some horrific stuff can happen to you, and it's really up to you and how you interpret it and live your life by it.
Absolutely. I actually really I concur with that. Actually, there is an immediate acute moment in time following trauma, sure, but it's not your choice. Your body
Yeah.
is physiologically dealing with what has happened. But there comes a point when that acute stage has passed, and when we begin to try to get back to normal life, that that there really are far more choices in how we choose to see an event. Do you see that event as having permanently damaged you? Then yes, it absolutely has. If you see that event as something that was temporal in nature and is past, and you and your essence as a person remain the same, then yes, that is true. So because our thoughts are things and they impact us, um, you can in effect choose how how long term your trauma is, and how it does or does not define you. And I think that's the overall message of the grudge, and it's being couched in an analogy or a metaphor that is occult in nature, using a using an analogy that's an occult analogy.
I'm glad how you brought that back around in line with theme, right? And I definitely want to say this before we move on from my previous statement. I'm not necessarily talking about, like you said, it's not physical things, right? Certain mental disorders and physiological disorders and stuff like that are not your fault. Those are things you cannot control. But those are also things that are your responsibility if you have them. Like mental illness and trauma is definitely not your fault, but it is your responsibility to deal with it however it is you would like to.
Yeah.
Um, Moving
Yeah.
on, back to Tool in the occult. um,
Which is all related.
and not necessarily songs too, but I mean their imagery.
Yeah.
They have the heptagram, 7-pointed star, huge magical symbol. I mean, on multiple levels, seven is a huge number in magic. The shape in general is very magical, apparently.
Yes.
I mean, it seems to be all working for them.
Yeah, I would say so. It's been rather effective,
um,
however you want to slice it.
right? So we talked about the Grudge. That has a lot of occult symbolism in there, but it may not be your favorite one. Is there a favorite one for you
Oh my gosh.
where it specifically relates to magic? Again, we're talking to
Yeah.
Kendall. One of the reasons we're talking to you, or I'm talking to you to be on the podcast, is because you wrote a whole book about this. I don't know if we made that clear, but you have a whole book
Yeah. Yeah.
relating
Actually.
Maynard James Keenan lyrics to the occult and tarot and magic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's called Beyond as Above, So Below: Understanding Hermetic Tarot Through the Music of Maynard James Keenan. And that, in effect, is what I've done. Is several years ago, about 5, almost 6 years ago now, I happened to be listening to a playlist, and I was thinking about what a crazy shift in stage presence uh, Maynard underwent when he moved from Tool to A Perfect Circle. And for people who were fans at the time, it was mind blowing to see him adopt a decidedly more feminine presentation, and a more feminine style of writing, and a more feminine style of singing, and music that he was singing with was decidedly more feminine in nature than Tool. And so it got me to thinking about how perhaps A Perfect Circle was his way of being able to explore the divine feminine, the feminine pillar on the tree of life, the goddess, however you want to phrase that. Um, and
He even adopted long hair. like
Yeah,
the,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah. He had prosthetic breasts. He
uh,
was writing songs about love, for crying out loud.
yeah.
And you could have knocked me over with a feather the first time I heard Metronome. Metronome blew my mind because I never in a million years thought that I would hear him sing about something so emotionally vulnerable as desire, romantic desire, romantic loneliness. Loneliness for the feminine was something that I just never ever in a million years expected to hear. And I think that most fans were taken aback by that.
So the song I think you're referencing is Three Libras.
Three Libras, really and honestly, the vast majority of Murder Gnome,
Yeah.
all the way down to Magdalena, The Hollow, Three Libras, all of the songs are really delving into Tool's main MO in the early days, especially, was anger. The only emotion was anger. It was anger, resentment, frustration, um, mistrust, all that. And when we saw a perfect circle come along, we started actually getting some more vulnerable emotion come through. There was loneliness, there was sorrow, there was betrayal, there was desire. Those things are not commonly associated with that really hard wall of fury that we as listeners had grown accustomed to with Tool. So it was kind of a jolt. Started thinking about how did all these, well, this song reminds me of this card. This song reminds me of this station on the tree of life. And then the next thing I knew, I realized that I could identify a song that matched with most tarot cards that I immediately came to mind, and I started literally mapping them out.
So if I threw out some songs, could you relate them to specific tarot cards,
Yeah,
like
more
from
than
memory?
most of them from memory. There are a couple that I changed right before publishing that I would probably have to go back and check to make sure. But yeah, and from Pussifer, Tool, and A Perfect Circle.
All right, I'm gonna throw some out if you don't
Okay,
mind.
here goes nothing.
Here goes nothing, right? A number one, hmm, parabola.
Parabola and Parable together are the High Priestess, which is Atu 2 in the Major Arcana, relates to intuition and the moon.
That song always makes me feel about, always the lyric that sticks out in my head with that song is the like pain is an illusion.
That's right. That's exactly right. We
Uh,
are eternal. All this pain is an illusion, and that is the exact tagline that I use for myself as a mnemonic to helping me remember what the High Priestess teaches. And that is, we are in direct relationship with Source at all times. We cannot be separated from it. We are it.
a
We
reflection,
are
if you will.
reflections of it. Absolutely.
Next song.
Mhm.
I'm gonna try to pick a weird one. Hmm.
Good. Good.
Let,
Let's go
let's go
for
with
it.
let's go with Pucifer this time. What about Indigo Children?
Yeah, actually, Three of Cups for the Indigo Children, which is Mercury and Cancer, and it is about celebratory times, revelry, dancing around the fire, food and drink is a strong theme in that card, as well as the song.
There's that song always reminds me. There's like these specific words in theomic. I hope I'm saying that right. Aleister Crowley's thing. I don't remember the words themselves, but I know what they mean. It's like wine, flesh, fish, grain, and sex.
Hmm.
That song always reminds me of that. That has to do with like left hand path magic. Um, Another song. Let's go with Perfect Circle this time and do the noose. How about the noose from A Perfect
Mm.
Circle?
So I didn't pick the noose, but I can relate the noose to what would I what card would I put it with? So just to kind of give you an idea of the thought process that I was thinking about, what I was doing when I was pairing. thinking about the major themes of the song. And the noose is a conversation with someone who's in recovery, who's become self-righteous and judgmental, and pointing out that, despite having overcome something large, it didn't make them perfect. That they're still fallible, just like everyone else, and that until you make repairs for what happened in the past, your slate is not fully clean, right? So I would be thinking about the universe, Saturn, as one of those cards. It would probably take more than one card to fully flesh out the news.
Tell me the two cards.
Seven of Cups comes to mind because it's a card about illusion, especially illusion around substances and habits, particularly drinking and addiction. And then probably also the Five of Swords, because it deals primarily with conflict and the way that we handle conflict, and whether or not you're an aggressor or a victim, as you will.
You saw Tool last night.
I did.
And they played a lot of I should have asked you about more songs that were fan favorites, but I have to be a contrarian. Wink. Anyways, let's talk about your show last night.
Yeah, it's a great show. It was a really
so
great
they were
show.
in Nashville, and they played a different set. Not a different set, but it seemed to take the songs that they'd been cycling in and out and doing all of them.
Yeah, yeah,
so
I don't know how. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously a fan, but not everybody is intimately familiar with the way that they structure their set lists on their tourists. I'm one of those geeks too. So I can say that typically speaking, they have a core set of about 8 tracks that they play at every stop on a tour. And then they tend to weave in and out, 2 to 4 different songs per night. So last night they rotated in.
Well, let's just do the whole set.
Sure.
I can probably tell you from the top of my head with only looking at it once. I'm sure they started with Fear Inoculum.
Yes.
Then the second song was a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Did they do Intolerance?
They did not do Intolerance then.
46 and 2?
Yep.
Yeah. 46 and 2. Third one is a normie. Numa?
One more before Numa.
All right, you tell me.
It was Lost Keys and Rosetta Stone.
That's right. That's the new one this tour. They say, they did.
Yep. And then they rolled into Numa and then Intolerance.
Which is a newer for this 2 legs.
Mm-hmm.
Then Descending.
Mm-hmm.
The Grudge.
Yep.
Then a Stop, right?
Yep.
Then they did Chocolate Chip Trip.
Yep.
Then they did Invincible.
They did one before Invincible.
Oh, Flood.
And then they slipped in Flood. Yep.
They did Flood.
Yep.
Then Invincible, and then Schism.
Yes. Yes. And that is the way they have been largely structuring all their set lists.
And you got Billy Strings last night, didn't you?
Yeah. I had Billy Strings on The Grudge.
On theme. Did you see any magic last night?
I always see magic when I see Tool.
I guess my question really is there specific things that you would notice that maybe the average person doesn't notice?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, well, first of all, I think that, Maynard does not talk, different performers have different levels of interaction with the audience. Some people are really, really interactive and talk to the audience and engage the audience in conversation between tracks. And Maynard is not one of those people. When he does directly address the audience in between songs, he's saying it because he's got something to say, and it's important, and it's intended to set the tone. So last night, they right after Fear Inoculum, the opening number, they briefly paused, and he told the audience, we're going on a little trip. Stay with us. Stay connected. keep your fucking phones in your pocket, right? And to the average listener, you don't think a thing about that. But what he's intentionally conveying is we are going on something of a psychedelic journey. You don't necessarily have to have taken a psychedelic substance in order to have a journey of the mind and the spirit. But that is what music and rhythm and chant and ecstatic dancing does to the human brain. It's how ritual is constructed. So he was setting the tone for and opening up ritual experience for the collective in that moment, in that statement. When he's saying stay connected, he was saying don't just stay connected to us on the stage. Don't just stay connected to the music. Stay connected to each other, to yourselves. Stay plugged in. Don't disconnect and pick up the thing that's in your pocket. Leave that thing alone. That's not connection. That's a false sense of connection. Real connection is happening in this room. And that is magic. That is shifting people's perspectives. And even if they don't understand it on that kind of a level, it's having that impact on the brain. So you're totally disconnected from your everyday reality. You're focused on what's going on on the stage. And there's wild animation going on. There's lighting, there's flashing, there's things that are telling your brain that you are not in a normal space right now.
Okay.
And all the while, you are thinking about concepts like letting go of grudges, finding common ground, rejecting what is destroying us, um, uh, understanding that we are each reflections of one another, that we are connected no matter what we do. We are inextricably connected to one another. All that stuff is happening at the same time that this unique environment, that's shifting you away from your everyday reality, is around you. And that is magic. Most people just don't recognize it as that.
That was probably the most elegant way I could explain it for that specific.
I think you're muted again.
Oh, sorry. That's probably the most elegant way I think could be explained on how that is a ritual. Because when I think about it, I definitely see it as a ritual, but I always imagine them going backstage and kind of jarring up the energy and
I
doing
think they
something.
do. Oh, absolutely. I absolutely believe that they have their own individual
Sigils.
practice and their practices as a group, the things that they do to kind of get in the headspace and the way that they set up their equipment and their instruments around the stage, the way that things are laid out, I think is absolutely done with intention. No
Yeah.
doubt in my mind.
Well, I mean, you can see it uh, again with having the heptagram literally hanging above them
Mm-hmm.
on stage. That's not for nothing. I mean, it is their symbol, but they could have anything up there. I mean,
Absolutely. Or
they
nothing at all. I mean, that symbol has been prominent in their material
from day
and their
almost day
set
one. Yeah,
probably what 20 going on 20 years now. I mean, I'm sure it at least goes back to Lateralis.
yeah. So other than them playing The Grudge last night, what songs on there, i- if not all of them, have specific meaning or were mentioned in your book?
All of them except for two, and it was the two that are, or I guess you could say three, because I don't. Chocolate Chip Trip doesn't
Yeah,
have lyrics, and so I'm not a musician.
sure.
So I could, if I were a musician, I might be able to analyze and find an appropriate card to match to an instrumental track, but I'm not. So I rely on lyrics because I'm a writer, and that's my medium. So everything except for Chocolate Chip Trip, Blood, and Intolerance, which were the two songs that are getting rotated in and out. All the
Sure.
other ones, they all have cards assigned to them, and they all appear in.
So Rosetta Stone is one of them?
Yes, yes,
All right,
absolutely.
what's that card?
That card is the Eight of Swords. The title for that card is Interference, and I can. The Eight of Swords is Jupiter and Gemini, and it really just conveys an overwhelm of information, an overwhelm of options, being scattered, uh, not having your wits collected about you, and or feeling trapped by options that seem to kind of feel like they're pinning you in. Here's that same card in the fifth deck.
That's a dope card.
It is. It's an intense card.
So let's just go through the whole set list. Let's
Yeah.
start at FI. Fear inoculum.
Yeah. Fair inoculum. Two of Swords. Also known as Peace. Aha.
Oh.
There we go.
Yeah. Look at that.
There we go. So now I can actually show you the cards a little bit easier.
That's awesome. So Fear inoculum.
Fear inoculum. Two of Swords. Peace. The hermetic title is Lord of Peace Restored, and Fear inoculum absolutely talks about the need for the restoration of peace of mind and getting back to some semblance of sanity. He's talking about this immunity, bless this immunity, is returning to a state of being unfucked by society, if you will. I love the way that song is kind of structured. There were several aspects of that song that made me think of the Two of Swords. And the sword suit in general, because swords are related to air, and so much of the lyrical content of that song is relating to air and breath. So Two of Swords for that one. The second track, 46 and 2, The Hermit. 46 and 2 is exploring how we can turn inward to find answers, to transform ourselves, to meet our shadow, and to integrate it. And the Hermit is exactly that archetype. Lost Keys, Rosetta Stone, we covered here with the Eight of Swords. Numa is the sun. And for folks who are familiar with the lyrics, that shouldn't come as any surprise. One of the main lines of the song is sun becoming. And the sun really is, its hermetic title is the Lord of the Fire of the World, I think is the name of the title, off from memory. That the sun has historically been humankind's conception of what God must be like. The sun is the bringer of food and nourishment, and we wouldn't survive without it. So definitely a deified presence in our lives. Then they moved in from Numa. They moved on to Intolerance, which was one that is not in the book. So the thing that I related to it is the Seven of Swords. Intolerance is all about not being able to trust what the other party is saying, not trusting their motives, and he also
Lie, cheat, and steal, right?
Yeah, putting away the dagger. But you lie, cheat, and steal, right? And that is exactly what the Seven of Swords is all about. Is that sinking feeling of you're not being given the entire truth, that something is being hidden from you, that there's some sort of clever game being played against you, and how do you deal with that realization? After Intolerance was Descending, Ten of Swords,
which is my favorite right now.
It's called Ruin.
I'd really like. All right, let's talk about Descending for a second, because I have a specific meaning about that song. First, I'd like to hear what the card means. You said it's a Ten of Swords?
Ten of Swords. Its title is Ruin, Lord of Ruin. And it's essentially the morning after cataclysm. It's the morning after, the gray light of dawn, after the absolute worst possible thing has happened. And now you're left with picking up the pieces, or burying the body, or disposing of the remains. It's in my thinking the second most challenging card in the deck.
Really?
For that reason, yeah. Yeah. So, what's your interpretation of Descending?
So my interpretation of that song is about how do I about having specific struggles in life. Wanton means like um, indulgence, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
very close to indulgence. So for me, it's that song specifically is about having these wild desires and then kind of putting those in check and figuring out what you need to do for the greater good of the universe. I know that's weird, and like kind of taking a stand for something other than your wild desires.
yeah. And I think that's exactly what yeah, um the archetypal essence of that song. I agree. I don't necessarily see it as sexual. I interpret it more along the lines of environmental.
Fair enough.
That the environmental apocalypse that's quickly hurtling our way, and at this point we're really powerless to stop it. All we can do is mitigate it. We can mitigate that ruin, as he
Mm.
says in the song. And the point of that 10 of Swords is that the worst has indeed happened, and at this point you're just dealing with what is, and you don't really have much choice but to come correct and face the music and do what you can to salvage what is left.
Great. Next, what's the next one?
Next one is the Grudge,
Which we've
and
covered.
we've covered, and that's the universe, the card of Saturn. After that was Chocolate Chip Trip, which has no lyrics. Then it was the Flood, or Flood rather, not the Flood, but Flood. And Flood was another one that I had to decide what would I call that card, and I would call that the Seven of Cups. For a couple of reasons. The Flood's lyrics really does focus on everything you thought you understood was wrong, and now you're having to reassess. And the Seven of Cups is called the Seven of Illusions as a nickname often because what you thought was true, what you thought, what resources, what runway, what options you thought you had, you really don't. And now you have to come to grips with the reality and reassess.
I feel like I do that every day.
Don't we all? Don't we all? And then they moved into Invincible, which I associate with the Emperor, particularly the warrior side of the Emperor archetype. But the Emperor also represents earthly masculinity. So all the mentions of victories in battle and weapon outbillion and uh, trying to remain consequential and relevant as a warrior and a leader and a male and a man um, conjures the emperor to me. And then finally, they ended with schism, which I associate with the lovers.
Hmm.
And most prominently because Crowley wrote about this card, rather that it should be called the brothers instead of the lovers. And I think that's really true. It's really about the way that the other serves as a mirror to ourselves that reflects back to us who we are. So the lovers involves um, themes around relating and relationship and um, equality in relationships and feeling valued and heard. And also issues of communication, which is a major theme of Gemini, and Gemini is the sign that is associated with the card of the lovers.
Now I'm going to make a terrible joke right
Go for it.
now. You said that Crowley wanted to call that card brothers instead of lovers,
Yeah.
which makes a lot of sense to me, since, and I'm not judging, he had a lot of sex with a lot of guys.
He had a lot of sex.
He did have a
Period.
lot of sex.
He just had a lot of sex.
He did. He
Yeah.
practiced you know, a lot of sex magic as well.
He did.
Sometimes in pyramids
Yep.
and in various energy spots around the globe.
Yeah.
Um, he was a wild guy.
He was. He was. He was.
uh,
He was deeply in touch with his sacral and creative energy.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And sacral meaning like in the lower end, right?
In the
Uh,
pelvic region.
in the
Yes.
pelvic region, both front and back.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not trying to be too crude. It's really hard for me not to make specific jokes, but um, I respect the guy. Um, I don't. He went really far with things. Um, really far.
He went really
Sometimes dangerously far. People died.
dangerously far. Yeah. Yeah.
People
Absolutely.
died. People went nuts.
And in ways that most people would not be willing to
No.
venture.
So again, talking about Crowley and the sacralness, there is a lot to do with magic and sex.
Oh, absolutely. One
And
million percent.
it's a
Again, we go back
powerful
to that.
magic.
Well, we go back to that notion of duality. You know, we have dualities around good and evil, moral and immoral, light and dark. Those are value systems that we place on them arbitrarily as humans.
Sure.
They, in and of themselves, don't have a value or a charge other than what we place on them. Now, what we can say is that region of the physical and ethereal body is the creative region. It is the region of the body that creates and outputs.
You're talking about the pelvic
These,
region.
yes, the pelvic region, whether that is waste in the form of
Sure.
excrement or whether that is um, birthing a child, but
Okay.
it is also energetically the center of our creativity that makes art, that creates businesses, that creates.
That's why they
Um,
say people have their best ideas on the toilet, right?
I mean, maybe.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to
I
make
mean,
light, but
but
I'm.
if you think about how energetically when we're producing either through this part,
Sure.
right? Um,
Your
and
voice.
our upper regions, which are our voice and our ideas and our minds, it is also possible to create from the other side of that. That
Sure. Yeah.
we are able to create both ways, and all our our culture of the last couple of millennia has increasingly valued this half above what we call the lower vibrations and the lower half and
Yeah. They don't want you to talk about anything that happens below the waist.
no, except for some very very specific things like producing children, producing life.
Yeah.
Um,
And even that sometimes is taboo to some people.
can be, yeah, and I think what's interesting about this notion of sex magic, I really do firmly believe that all magic is sex, in that sex, the word itself means the combining of two things to yield a third thing. It's really all the word means. Sexual production. Sexual production.
Whether or not there's a child involved or not.
Correct. And so sometimes that might look like you're marrying the disciplined side of you with the passionate side of you to yield a business that actually functions and is successful. And not just purely the sperm and the egg produce a child. There's that metaphor runs a variety of ways, and you can see that all the way down into things like alchemy, because the alchemical elements, there are three. One is masculine, one is feminine, and one is neither. Um, and all those things together create the entire universe that we see and experience rather. So I think people get hung up on this notion uh, of what sex is, and that it's only this thing, and that this only thing is somehow got a negative charge on it, and it's much broader than that. And I go so far as to say that all sex is magic and all magic is sex, because it is those both of those things are fundamentally creation.
If the person, if most people have this like specific idea right, of what sex is. And you're saying that all sex is magic and all magic is sex. I guess what comes to my mind is that there also is like a particular way to study, um, like it's something you can study, right? There's rituals in itself, and there's a whole element this way that's not necessary, that actually is like the practice, I guess. And what 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 does that look like actually, other than just having sex?
Oh, well, I think even before having sex, it's recognizing the pieces of you that are positive end of the battery and the pieces of you that are the negative end of the battery, and which side of that battery are you weaker on or stronger on, and how do you balance those two so that they are equally strong, and then therefore your battery will hold a charge. Because all of us have both masculine and feminine energy and qualities present in us. The question is, do we have them appropriately balanced so that we can draw on them as needed or at will? So that we
Mm.
have, for instance, the emotional capacity, which most people would find to be a feminine quality. You have access to the full range of your emotions. Can you express them adequately and healthily? Can you conversely move into a more active role when that is called for? Can you, so to speak, take charge when you need to? Both of those two scenarios are evidence of how well the two poles of masculinity and femininity are balanced within you.
And what do you mean by charge?
I mean, the ability. So, when we talk about magic, we talk about building up a cone of energy to its crescendo and then releasing that energy at the climactic moment.
I
Uh-huh.
love your language because I feel like you're gonna say something naughty, but then you don't, and it's very it's classy.
Well, I mean, you don't. Um.
I appreciate the classiness. Is all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, it can be
You
said.
can say whatever you want,
It
but
can be said
FYI,
a variety of ways. But I guess when
this is
I'm.
not a child's podcast.
Oh,
But
and we're not talking about childish things by any stretch.
no,
But uh I use the word climax because that this description can be fit for not just what happens in a sex magic operation that actually involves sexual activity, but it can also be equally applied to what we experienced in Bridgestone Arena last night
okay.
while four
So
people were playing on stage.
so
Um,
what would have been the climactic moment of last night?
oh gosh, man, it's every time in every song where the lights come up and every hand is up in the air and everyone is emphasizing the word that is being said. You can feel it. It's that punctuated moment where it's the phrase we're all waiting to scream, right? That's the
So you're saying
climactic moment.
so in turn, you're saying that at last night's show, the entire arena was having multiple orgasms.
Oh yeah.
Spiritual orgasms.
Oh, absolutely.
Just
Absolutely.
busting hella nuts.
Yeah. Over and over and over and over again. Yeah. And I
No wonder
think,
I go to so many Tool shows.
oh, I think of all the Tool shows I've been to. I think of all the songs, all of it. Absolutely, man. And that's happening every single time you go to a show that you are amped up, excited, screaming the lyrics, deafening the person next to you. That's
Hmm.
what's happening. You are full on participating in a ritual. And if the people on stage are magicians worth their salt, they're aware of that and they are directing it. And it has an intention and a purpose.
So what do you think their main intention is?
Now, I think their
Yeah.
main intention is unity and helping people find the middle way.
What were their previous intentions?
I think, like all of us, when we're young, we're angry, we're resentful, we want freedom, we want power. We felt powerless for all of our childhood and adolescence, and we want it. And so we're fighting for it. And I think when most people's really young music, that's where that is coming from, the struggle for independence and power. And I think as most people get older, you hear people talk about, like, oh, I liked them better when they were young and angry. They're not angry anymore. Well, why aren't they angry anymore? Well, they've healed. They've gotten a little older and a little wiser, a little more mature. They don't have the energy for anger anymore. They've come around to realize that it can't be all anger all the time or you burn out.
No, I really like the explanation of their career path, um, because I always see them. Again, I'm really interested in chaos magic. Um, Not that I've practiced anything.
No.
I haven't made sigils and done not weird, but my own what's it called, rituals. There's some fun ones. I haven't written people's names on paper and done things to that paper.
I would never think that you would do that.
But sometimes you just gotta try stuff out. You gotta keep an open mind, right?
Right,
That's
right.
the whole point. Um, but no, I do like that description of their career path in how you're relating it to, magic in general, and again tarot in general, right? Like these specific archetypes. Because again, as a kid, and you hear about Tool, and you're like, there's all this sacred geometry. They're doing crazy stuff. Aleister Crowley, these guys they're doing full on spells back there. They must be wearing like robes and have all this like crazy gear. And then you grow up and you're a little wiser, and you're like, well, maybe it's not that theatrical, but but then it is, on stage. Um, I don't know. It's just really interesting. I don't really have a point to all that other than it's like really interesting, and I'm trying to put it all together in my brain. like,
I I have really enjoyed um I've enjoyed being under their spell. Or
that's really you're correct in that. It's really what it is.
yeah,
There's a lot of people under that spell.
absolutely.
Uh, I wonder if it's a specific spell name. It must be. Um, so at the beginning of the show, we talked about you doing a reading for me.
hmm hmm
Is that something you'd still be open to doing?
Sure, sure. I'd be happy to do that actually.
I I know we were running a little bit longer than we originally talked, but um, I it's just so interesting. And again, I'm being on my best behavior.
Well, we there's a time and a place for best and worst behavior.
What time is this?
This is a time for honesty. How's that?
Honestly? Okay,
Honesty.
honestly, I've been holding back.
So I'm going to turn the camera back over to the cards again. So here we've got the choice between, we've got the Tabula Mundi here, which is the deck that is illustrating the book. And I also have a borderless Thoth deck here, Aleister Crowley Thoth. Do you have a
Wait,
preference?
I'm gonna ask a question first.
Hmm.
You said the borderless deck was what about Aleister Crowley?
The Thoth deck is the name of the deck. Different people pronounce it different ways. I've heard some people say Thoth. I've heard some people say Tote.
Oh yeah, I've heard
Tot.
thoughts. Yeah,
A
I'm gonna go with
variety.
the borderless one because I feel like it's more dangerous.
Well, they do each have their own unique. Uh,
And mind you, who's listening. I am going to be completely open. This is not something I'm doing to be facetious or um, I'm not going to be punching down. I'm I'm taking this seriously. I'm just going to be me. Like I said, be honest, right?
Excellent, excellent. Yes, and for my part, I am going to read for you as though you were any person I am just meeting sitting across the table from me asking for a reading.
Great.
Okay, excellent. So, hopefully, I don't know if we adjusted your volume and such for shuffling, so I'm hoping this will not be too loud.
I don't hear it at all.
Okay, excellent. Well, I haven't really started shuffling yet, so we'll see. So, have you had a tarot reading before?
Um, if I'm being completely honest, I know people have done them for me and I was not around. Does
Mm-hmm.
that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And people have told me like, "Oh yeah, I did a reading for you here and there." I don't necessarily know if I've ever sat down and somebody like took it seriously.
Okay. Well,
So I don't know what kind of answer that is.
no, that is perfectly good.
I'm gonna
Do
I'm gonna
you
say
have
no.
do you have a particular question you wanted to ask? Something you wanted to ask about?
Mm, no.
Oh, all right.
I'm leaving the um I'm leaving it up to the universe.
Excellent. Okay. Well, let's see what we can get into. I'm going to continue shuffling.
How many times do you shuffle?
Well, you're about to find out. I would like for you to not clear your mind. Think about all the things that are going on in your life right now that you would love to have clarity or guidance on. And then whenever you're ready, tell me to stop and they'll be in the right place.
Sorry. I have to deep breathe to figure that out. Got it.
All right. Tell me. Oh, I already know when your birthday is because you already told me. So, what I'm doing right now, I am looking for the Knight of Cups, who's right here. No, that's the Queen. Sorry. I'm looking for the Knight of Cups. He rules over that part of the calendar where your birthday is. And there he is right there. So, this is where I'm going to cut the deck, take the bottom of the deck, and put it there on the bottom, reassemble. That's a method that Lon Milo Duquette uses for cutting his cards, and I find it works really, really well. So what's here on top now is the card that rules the area of the calendar where your birthday is.
And for some people, remember that they're only hearing this, so we're gonna have to explain
Yes.
everything.
Yes. So I'm getting to lay the cards out in the spread and just dealing out cards here. And I will move these around as needed so that they're visible on the camera for those who are watching and for
I've seen
you.
some of those powerful cards we were talking about earlier.
Uh-huh. I was noticing that. All right. So what's on the table right now is a spread of 17 cards, 4 sets of 4 with an overarching theme here in the middle. And in the middle, you have these these 10 of swords.
Looks angry.
It's angry, all right. This is that card we were talking about before with descending ruin. So having an overarching theme of the Ten of Swords is really kind of an acknowledgement that you're in a position of needing to surrender some old ideas, old identities, old ways of looking at the world.
Oof.
This is probably happening in more than one area of your life right now.
It's happening in all areas.
All right. Well, then that tracks, and we already know we're off to the races. And so you pointed out very correctly that several of the cards that are on the table are what we call major arcana cards. They are cards that relate to major archetypes in the human psyche and in the human life cycle that we all experience. And Chris, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, seven out of 16 cards that are major arcana cards. So you've got some pretty significant developments going on right now. And just kind of diving into that first set, I'm going to move things around a little bit. That's all visible here. All right. So first set of 4, we have the Lovers, the Seven of Cups, the Princess of Discs, and the Hierophant, or Hierophant, if you will. All right. So the Lovers we talked about a little bit earlier. That's really about choices that we make and about um, choosing between options that seem equally enticing, as well as ways in which our relationships are or are not balanced and equal. Followed by the Seven of Cups, which is dealing with illusions around how much runway we have, how many options we have, how much time we have, and the ways that we deal with or shove traumatic stuff under the rug is card often called the Seven of Illusions. The Princess of Discs is usually related to our ability to create our own reality, and then the Hierophant card, which is an archetype of the pastor, the priest, the clergy member, the person who connects divine wisdom with everyday wisdom here on earth. So putting these together, we're looking at probably an area of your life where you're having to make a decision that's bringing you face to face with how your choices and actions have created your reality for better and for worse, and that probably you've got this lovely opportunity of really coming to terms with the fact that you can create reality as you want it, however you whatever you want, whatever you can conceive for yourself, you have the ability to create. And part of how that comes about is embracing this archetype, which is really the in my thinking, a really great illustration of as above, so below. So a lot of times when people get this card, I'm asking them how active they are in their faith of choice. Do they have a relationship with a clergy person who can help them kind of translate the divine or spiritual teachings, the sacred teachings, into something you can actually apply in your everyday life? So for most people, that looks like going to church. For people who don't necessarily attend church, which I'm getting the impression that you're not the church going kind.
I am not.
Um, this would be more along the lines of how do you yourself embody that archetype? How do you become the priest and therefore become minister to yourself and learn how to connect the esoteric, which are the secret teachings, to the exoteric, which is the teaching for the lay community? How do you translate the sacred teachings into something that applies to your own life? And so a lot of times that's looking like upping your meditation game, making sure that you're actually reading your texts, making sure that you are participating in your spiritual life and reaching for the divine instead of perhaps making choices that lead you further into the hole you're trying to dig yourself out of, whether that's bad habits or no habits. Not, I mean, a lot of times with that Seven of Cups, we're talking about very mundane choices like whether or not we drink or whether or not we eat
Don't drink.
correctly.
Don't eat correctly.
Yep. This can even be a card. So this is Venus in Scorpio, which a lot of times is I relate to um, injuries that we sustain on the more vulnerable parts of ourselves. And so that can look like things like, if you have trauma in your past and how that trauma has or has not been dealt with and what you've been doing to self-medicate it. So this is a moment where you can break a cycle where you may have been self-medicating an old hurt or an old injury that never really healed, so that you can make your reality better match your hopes and your aspirations. And that is a choice. That is a choice that you can make.
So can I tell you what I think you're talking about?
If you would like to, you are certainly not obligated to.
No, I would like to.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not going to go to specific details of my own life, but
Sure.
Themes. What I get how I'm going to apply what these cards are saying is that the first card is I have a choice right now to that's the first card is I have a choice right now, and the second card is to either keep doing the let's say negative things or positive. I can keep doing what I'm doing right now, or I have the ability to manifest is now the third card. Have the ability to manifest whatever I want. But the last card is saying I should probably lean towards more of like the divine, which I which resonates with me personally because it's something that I do not do at all. Meaning, I feel very connected, but I do not. I've never explored my own spirituality.
Wow.
It's just been kind of on default, and I've trusted it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I follow. I kind of do the spiral thing, like ladder. Like I just kind of go with the wherever it should lead me. But maybe that's not necessarily what's good for me anymore.
Well,
Maybe
maybe
I should.
maybe it's kind of continue doing that, but maybe deeper, maybe more intentionally, maybe more
Intention,
regularly
right.
as a practice or a praxis.
So before we go to the next set,
Mhm.
um, is is there a specific meaning to the first, second, third, and fourth set?
No, there's not. Usually, just in going through the meanings of the cards, you you figure out what it's talking about.
Okay.
But it's never any set like this is your health, this is your family, this is your nothing like that. It's whatever the universe
Or
needs
like,
to convey. Now
sure,
I will
there's not like a
say
past, present, future, or
nah,
something.
no, that's I mean it's a perfectly valid way to read, but it's not the way that I typically read.
Sure.
This is my way. Uh
Gotcha.
and I will say, because of who we are and the medium through which we're having this conversation, a focal point song for you to focus on to help you kind of move through to the next level would be Philosopher's Sour Grapes.
Okay.
There's your prescription for
Because
that one.
is
So
there always sour grapes with you, boy? No, I'm just kidding.
uh-huh. It's definitely pay attention to the spoken piece in the beginning, and I will
Okay.
leave it at that.
Gotcha.
Uh, then moving down here into the next section we have Lust, the Chariot, the High Priestess, my goodness, and the
My
Eight of
goodness.
Wands. That's three heavy hitters right there, all deeply, well, these two most certainly very deeply feminine cards. And this card is also feminine, but in a more referential way. So lust is exactly what it sounds like. It is vitality and lust for life. And it absolutely focuses on our sacral center. It's our creative ability, sexuality, sensuality. Um,
It's the horny card.
it's the horny card, and it's the card of being in your body
Gotcha.
as opposed to being stuck in your head, right? It also corresponds to Leo, the sign of Leo. The chariot card is the card of movement. Obviously, a chariot is a vehicle of transportation. So we think about progress, including progress that yields a higher or better standing. Um, Moving on up, as they say. And it can also be the protection of that which we value or the things that can't protect themselves, because this card is depicting the knight conveying the Holy Grail. So he's charged with protecting and conveying the Holy Grail. Following that card is the High Priestess, which we kind of briefly discussed earlier around parable and parabola. And that is your gut instinct, your connection to the lunar mysteries, your connection to the divine feminine. Um, and then finally, the Eight of Wands, which is a card about rapidly evolving situations, often denotes receiving information that you weren't expecting or unexpected developments that kind of hit out of the clear blue nowhere. And it's usually a really
That's every day.
positive card. I love this card.
It's a really positive card?
It's usually a pretty positive card, and especially when
Fair
you're
enough.
looking at what is next to it, it is well
Okay.
dignified, as we would say.
So please explain that to me, like as a theme, as a whole theme, that
Yeah.
those four cards.
So, putting these cards together, we're looking at you drew in a you have this opportunity to re-engage your creative side, and that re-engagement of creativity or deepening engagement of creativity does cause change and progress to take place. Allows you to better contact your intuition and being in touch with um, guides or source, or however you would like to frame that. It's wisdom. It's that understanding that we are absolutely part of the divine. We are expressions of the divine. And then that rapid change. It's like, to me, this is saying, uh, by engaging this part of you, you are allowing um, real change to take place. You're allowing that balancing and integration of the masculine and feminine, the positive and negative poles of the battery we were talking about earlier. That would absolutely yield a charge. That absolutely, and I mean, this card here, this is Mercury and Sagittarius for the Eight of Wands. That's absolutely a charge, um, electrical in nature. And I often associate this card with the digital age as well. So things like receiving text or emails or messages out of the blue. Um, Not unlike how you and I connected 24 hours ago, and then suddenly here we are in this conversation. It's those kinds of developments that are just by happenstance.
So can I do the same as the first where
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I just need a little more clarity on the first card.
Yeah, yeah. So that lust card, that's Babylon riding the beast. And if you're familiar with Dilemma at all, you know that this is a symbol of sex magic. It's a symbol of change that occurs as a result, alchemical change that occurs as a result of putting together two uniquely opposing forces that yield a third and entirely different force. So this is that act that yields that third thing, right? So if we're going to be crudely talking about it, we have a woman riding a beast, and we mean that in every possible sense.
Hell yeah.
And that is that lust for life. That is that drive. I mean, let's be real. What is the drive in life but pleasure? Is pleasure is what
True.
causes nearly anything and everything of value that we love and hope for to happen, including love, right? This
Agreed.
is the force that makes the universe go.
Okie dokie. So I'm also going to relate to the previous ones.
Hmm?
Is this kind of what I've, and I'm pointing at my screen, which people don't see, but starting with the first one, it feels, no, the other first one from the first, yeah. So if I can, I have a choice to, you know, change
Mm-hmm.
and I can manifest a new, reality and hopefully I take the direction of the divine. If I do that, then we get to the second first card, right? Which means this is like I feel like this is the result if I can do the first one,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
If I can complete the first task, then this second one will be a lust for life that is protected and closer to the divine,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then also extremely the charge card, meaning like you said, unexpected news,
Rapid changes, rapid
rapid
developments.
change, in a positive direction.
Yeah, yeah. And I would also go even further and to say that this will not be complete in order for this to begin, but I would say they're concurrent. That
Gotcha.
you opening up that part of your practice yields the lust for life from the outset.
Okie doke. Yeah, I don't. I've been saying okie dokie a lot. It's like something new. I'm sorry. Um, got it. I got it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna kind of push these off to the side here. I'm gonna keep them in the proper order in case we have to refer back to them. Right. And we're gonna
No, I'm
move.
liking it. I'm liking it. It's all good news.
All good
Uh,
things.
can
Okay.
can can we revisit the middle card, the angry one?
Yeah, the angry one, the one that looks angrier than it really is. This is really surrender, man. This is really
Okay.
like surrendering old ideas that don't fit anymore. And it only is painful the harder you cling to it.
I'm just trying to relate it to what we've talked about so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is you got in order for you to be able to make these choices up here that we're talking about, you got to surrender certain ideas about what things mean. What will it mean if you re-engage or deeply engage your sexuality? What will it mean if you choose to inhabit your spirituality in a deeper and more regimented way? Like these are the kinds of things you're going to be reconsidering and who you are and what that means about you is
Hmm.
encapsulated in this card.
Open to it.
So then this next set here, here we get some interesting stuff. So you got the Ace of Discs, the Eight of Swords, the Ten of Discs. So I always take note. You've got the Ace and Ten, same suit there. So that implies a completion of swords. And then you have the Tower card. Now everybody freaks out when they see the Tower card, but
I ain't scared of
again,
a tower card.
there are no good or bad cards in tarot, just neutral archetypes that we apply. So, looking at this set, the Ace of Discs is for me the Maker's card, the card of creating something new. And because discs relate to material reality and things we can hold manifest in our hands, we're talking about things that exist on this plane. So it could be anything from
I already know what
producing
you're talking about.
a work of art or
I heard.
creating a business or so, but it's making something.
I got it.
That inspiration and that drive to make is being thwarted by probably racing thoughts, too many ideas, too many possibilities, not being able to choose a direction, or feeling like the direction you want to go is thwarted by all these obstacles. Essentially, it's your brain fooling you into believing that you have fewer options than what you really have.
What?
Then that's followed by the Ten of Discs. Ten of Discs is an interesting card to follow the Eight of Swords because this is really like a frenetic or unfocused or scattered thinking or energy. And then the Ten of Discs is much more focused. It's much more related to how we build and direct the wealth of resources that belong to us. And then the Tower card is the card of like tearing down things that are no longer applicable or they're not true anymore, tearing those things down so you can rebuild in truth. So what I gather from these cards together is, you have this wonderful impetus to create something, but you feel trapped or stuck in some way. And the way to get unstuck is to think about in a very global way, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to say or think about you when your time on this planet has passed? What do you want to leave to the people who you love? What do you want your ultimate impact of your wealth of resources, knowledge, everything you've got? What do you want that to sum up to? By having that focus, it clears everything else that your monkey brain is telling you for why you can't achieve what you want or build this thing. But once you have that focus and you understand where you're heading, you're going to automatically see the things that suddenly don't fit, and you're going to be cleaning house. Going to have to get rid of some things that are part of that monkey brain, things that are distracting you, things that are not serving you. Maybe it's things like commitments to stuff that doesn't really even serve your overall purpose anymore, or um,
Like posters.
being able to understand where you're spinning your wheels so that you can eliminate that commitment and then be able to recollect that energy and direct it at the thing you actually want to build instead of old commitments you may have racked up and just have always kept. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
does it
I
does it ring true for you?
Of course.
Okay.
I get this one is a little bit more. This is one's like you said is a little bit more tangible
Mm-hmm.
in this realm of things because I mean you don't know much about me. We met 24 hours ago, right?
Yep.
Just for people listening, you messaged me out of the blue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And within a day, I was like, let's do this. Um, Actually, within a few minutes, I told you we should record tomorrow.
Yeah. And my
um,
schedule happened to also be open. It was one of those. I guess this is just meant to be. So we're gonna do this.
yeah. So, again, with you not knowing literally anything about me, not only do I do this podcast, but I also make short films. I dabble in. I'm learning to dabble in actual physical art. Um, I'm a chef. I like professionally. What else do I do? I play music on a semi-regular basis. I have a ton of ideas in my brain all at once at all the time. And so when you're talking about those first two cards, my brain immediately goes to I have had a lot of issues lately, and again I go to therapy regularly. This is something I'm not ashamed of or anything. The current theme in my therapy right now is trying to focus my energy on one specific project. And it doesn't even matter which one because I'll probably be good at anything I do. Um, yeah. So it's ringing pretty true. The Tower card is reminiscent of this is not the first project that I've done. And usually when I get to something and I get what I want out of it, I usually am just done.
Mm-hmm.
So no, but no, I'm completely resonating with the idea of what's happening with these cards about creating something, getting scattered, focusing, and then letting it letting it tell you where it wants to go, I guess,
Yeah. And
and
what's interesting about
and
the
not being
tower?
hindered by the project in general, I guess.
Yeah. And I think you're spot on. I can totally see that coming out of these two cards, and I can also totally get that with this ten of discs as well. The tower card I like to point out to people is correspondent to Mars, and Mars is a doer. Mars is a we're gonna get shit done. We're gonna tear things down. We're gonna have the fight that wants to be had. We're gonna go into battle and we're gonna do some shit, right? So
Okay, so how
this
that changes? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Continue.
I was just gonna say like that. That really does kind of reinforce this notion of you're gonna have to move some things out so that new things. You gotta weed the garden so that the
You
stuff
want to
you've
know what
planted can bloom.
you want to know what it tells me?
Mm.
It tells me that I have to pick a side.
Mm.
And I have to stand for something, which is
Yeah.
some which is something that I stray away from.
Well,
Um,
if it has meaning and bearing to what you want your legacy to be, I would think that that would make it a little bit easier.
mm, alrighty,
Okay.
I'm getting what you're throwing down.
All right.
You
All
know,
right. Well,
literally speaking.
let us not belabor the point then, and we shall move on. So, your last set here, the Star, the Three of Cups, the Three of Swords. So we have two threes, and then the Four of Swords, also two swords cards right next to each other. So, um, wow, I really, I really appreciate seeing these together. Okay, so the Star, Star is our. Oh, well, I'll come back to that. Don't let me forget to come back and give you a wrap up. So the Star is all about our ability to envision the future, to trust in something larger than ourselves, to have faith in the source that put us here. It's also tied to the sign of Aquarius, so that brings up things like technology and technological advancement, humanitarianism, collectivism, and also a little bit of an emotional distance and a preference for higher thinking as opposed to emotion is encompassed here in the star. Then we have the Three of Cups, which is the celebratory card. It's the card that we were talking about with indigo children, feasting, fire, dancing, cavorting around the fire, celebration. The Three of Swords is kind of the opposite of that Three of Cups, and it is called sorrow. And I think of it as the suffering of the Buddha or the suffering of Christ, understanding that it's all beautiful, it's all bliss, it's all shit, and it's all miraculous all at the same time. And when we come to terms with the fact that the ability to feel sorrow, to feel grief, to feel loss is miraculous, we find peace with the inevitability of sorrow and loss and grief. They find some beauty in it. It's also a card about breaking patterns around loss and sorrow, namely for the ability to find the beauty in it. And then,
Hold on. Before you tell me about that card, I need to do something.
yeah.
Because I have an idea. I wanted to write one word.
Okay.
All right. Fourth card.
Fourth card is the Four of Swords, which follows the Three of Swords. And the Four of Swords is called Truce. And it's about taking a break or taking a respite from something that is heavy on you, a burden. It's not permanently setting that burden down. You're gonna have to come back and deal with it later. But you need a reprieve. You need a break. So putting these together, usually when I get this card, I'm asking the person, so when's the last time you took vacation? When's the last time you took a long weekend off or something like that? Has it been a minute?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I have never taken a break.
Well, that would explain a lot.
As the meaning and how it relates to me, I have something in mind.
Okay. And sometimes it is like a break from a situation or a person or a place, like needing to get away and get some perspective and just take a minute to rest and breathe and recollect yourself. So putting all these things together here, I would think that it would be related to something that your long-term vision, your long-term plan is really beginning to fruit, beginning to bear out. But it also requires some loss too. You also experienced loss in that along the way, and that is not done. It's not ever done. Loss is just a part of change, and change is a constant. So, your vision, even as it is coming into its fruition, doesn't look exactly the way that you wanted it to, may not manifest exactly how you planned it, may involve losses that you didn't anticipate. And I think that this four is inviting you to take a step back as you need to take the space you need in order to process this stuff, because even good change is stressful. Even positive developments can be overwhelming. And when they are, it is necessary to kind of take some time to process all that information and to integrate it so that you can use it and continue to grow from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm also trying to think about this with the other decks as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I'm trying to do, which I'm having a hard time doing, is not thinking about it linearly or like in a line, because that's how my brain wants to work. It wants to go from first card, second card, okay, and then now we're here, but that's not necessarily the case.
It's not. I typically do roughly read that way. I mean, you can even tell in the way that I'm interpreting the cards, in the order that I'm interpreting the cards. But all of these things can be simultaneously true. Doesn't necessarily have to be a this happens and this happened and this happened, but can be along the lines of, as a result of this, you're getting these flavors, and then here's what you need in order to balance these two very opposing things. You need time and space to integrate these things, the joys and the losses, the success and the loss.
Because I want to think about it, like my brain wants to think about it linearly, and I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing.
I don't know that you necessarily want to try to do it that way, because then that equates to good things happening make bad things happen. And I don't
see it as that necessarily. And again, I don't want to tell you know better than me, but
well, it's your life and you're the expert on it. So
Yeah,
I
this is
just
true.
definitely defer to your interpretation, but those are
So
what those
my
archetypes generally add up to. So
sure.
um,
Um, what I'm getting from this is that again, I have to relate it to everything else that you said, but you know, that first card is kind of like the culmination of the work, right? I get to see the source or feel it,
mhm.
and or whatever you want to call that, joy, and it also bears fruit, right?
Mhm.
But also with me, a problem that I have is that I don't let anything get too happy. Um,
Uh, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
yeah, so no matter how good it's gonna get, I'm always going to remember that um, there is a sadness in the world, or in the,
I think
uh,
that's a balanced approach. Just when when that uh, when that comes, that you're giving yourself the grace to deal with it, to sit with it, to and you're not just sweeping it under the rug and continuing to run a million miles an hour, because then you never get the chance to actually integrate and learn and grow from what's happened.
um, that was, I hear you, um, and I'm going to take that to heart, because how I see that last card about taking a break, it, and I wrote a word, and I'll show it to you now, which would mean where's it at? Cycle,
Mm-hmm.
meaning I thought that that was going to have something to do with that card, and that would make sense because after, you know, I do all of this work, I'm going to have to take a break before I do it again.
Of course, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And everything about tarot is cyclical in nature.
Yeah,
It's not linear. Nothing, in fact, nothing in nature is actually linear. It's all a circle or even a spiral.
or simultaneously. I mean, they're trying to.
Absolutely.
They've been talking about time lately as, there's no
Concurrent.
separation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
concurrent. It's all concurrently happening. All this that you
yeah.
see happening now, it's happening now. Everything in the past, it's happening now. And the future, hey, guess
Mm.
what? It's happening now. Um,
You told me to remind you about a wrap up.
Yeah, so here's what I wanted to do. I'd already done it for the first set of cards. I was telling you the prescriptive song for you to kind of lean into to help you get where
Yes,
you're going. So
yes,
here,
yes.
that's the
The
first
first one,
sour
the first one
grapes.
is sour grapes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the second set, I can't pick just one. I would actually, yeah, I can. Parable Parabola would be that one. Tune into your gut and trust that no matter what
That's
happens, it's the right thing and you're safe and you're whole.
that's that's like my top three songs,
Oh yeah, good, good, good,
of any songs ever. So
good. Well, good. We're on the right track then. And then for uh this set, I'm gonna tell you to go with this Ace of Discs song, and that is gonna be "Lighten Up, Francis." "Lighten Up, Francis" is a Pussifer song. It's from the Money Shot.
okay,
And the other one, actually, you need twofold with that one. So you also need Autumn.
I know that song well.
It's also the same album, and that is for the Ten
Yeah,
of Discs. But those two together kind of convey the overall message here. Uh, Lighten up, get out of your head, get back in your body, right? And then think about what your priorities are.
gotcha.
And then for this last set, I would tell you to look at Grand Canyon. Grand
These are
Canyon by
all
Pussifer.
these are all songs I listen to on a regular basis.
Excellent. So what you'll want to do then is really focus on. I don't know if you're a lyrics person, but if you're not familiar with the lyrics, get familiar with the lyrics and really
You
just
want
sink yourself into the experience of those songs.
you want to hear something funny?
What's that?
Again, without you having ever listened to this podcast, a very common theme in my show is that I do not look at lyrics.
Are you serious?
Yeah, at all. I think it was talked about in the last episode. I specifically do not look at lyrics because I don't like people telling me what songs are about.
Oh, well, all I'm telling you is those
And
songs
not in like
have
an
archetypes that are
well. This is
reflected in those cards.
well. It's funny because I respect what you do, right?
Thank you.
Maybe this is part of the whole theme of the reading, which is part of it was getting over old ideas that don't necessarily do me any good, right?
Yeah.
So if I hold on to this arbitrary rule that I have about not letting people dictate what songs mean to me, then maybe I won't get anything out of what you just did for me.
And when you listen to the song and you interact with it vis-a-vis your own memories and your own associations that you have with the song, I'm trusting that the archetype is going to convey to you exactly what you need. Not what I would have told you, but what the archetype
Sure.
has to offer you.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
This is officially the longest episode we've done, and I want to thank you. Can everybody listening again? I know I'm not ending quickly. I just want to make sure everybody knows who you are, and this has been M. Kendall Lackey.
M. Kendall Lackey, and my all of my handles everywhere are the same. M. Kendall Lackey, and it's spelled weird, so I can spell that if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
MKYNDYLLLACKEY. So you'll see there's 3 L's there in the middle, and that
Kendall
is
Lackey.
Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and also my website as well. So, and bear with me, the YouTube is definitely a work in progress.
And she has a book out called
Beyond as Above, So Below. Understanding Hermetic Tarot through the music of Maynard James Keenan.
So if you're a Tool fan and you like Maynard's lyrics and you want to know how they, relate to tarot and magic and occult ideas, you need to buy her book immediately. It is on Amazon. It is available. I find this subject to be incredibly interesting. Thank you so much.
Chris, thank you. It was a pleasure. I really, really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you as well. I'm going to look at you. Please come on the show again.
I would love it. Absolutely love it. I appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
Spiral Out Podcast is produced by me, your host, Chris West, edited by me, researched by me. Everything is pretty much just done by me. Go to our website, spiraloutpod.podbean.com. Follow us on Instagram at spiral_out_pod. Facebook, Spiral Out Podcast. And again, if you want to see some of the images associated with this episode, click the link in the show notes and it'll take you there. Again, thank you for listening. Spiral Out. Pod dismissed. Wait, that's another show.